Hello everyone and welcome to another Premier Pundits podcast. We're looking ahead to game week 31. My name is Ben Dooney and of course I'm joined by my esteemed co-host who is in my crosshairs, but I'll tell you more about that later. It's Mr. Jason McKenna.
Hello, Ben. Yeah, it's just been terrible this season for FPL, but we're still giving advice. I still think that we are doing good analysis. You know, certain things, like we said, TAA is a great shout, and he did well last game week. But with a lot of these situations here, we identify players, but we don't have them in our teams. You, for certain reasons, Ben, to do with differential dinneriness, and me just not having the momentum in my squad to kind of move it in that direction. But apart from that, positive, you know, with the country coming out of lockdown, looking forward to the rest of this season, 31 to 38. I think there's going to be a lot of goals. And that's why we're talking about defence this week. I think with a starting point, talking about goals, only two teams kept clean sheets last weekend. I think the analysis that we did over the international break was kind of partially proven there, wasn't it, Ben?
Just make sure I take myself off mute. Yeah, look, I was looking at some of those results that were coming in. Of course, it's a very small data set, but it was encouraging to see some of those early games sort of pan out the way we thought they would. You know, we flagged the likes of potentially Liverpool bouncing back and pushing on, and again, you know, TAA being one of those players in Salah, and also, you know, in and around that sort of group 7, 8, and 9, we also flagged the potential downturn for maybe Arsenal and also Everton. You know, Everton can consider themselves extremely, well, I suppose, maybe it's unfortunate, or, you know, on the flip side to that, maybe, you know, they got all they deserved for not taking their chances. In Arsenal now, you know, that defeat, that heavy defeat, plus the loss of David Luiz and also Kieran Tierney, which could be for, you know, the rest of the season. You know, I think we'll see Mikel Arteta's focus now just shift completely towards that Europa League. They've got the semi-final tie on Thursday, and, you know, that's their only real chance of getting anywhere near the Champions League. So, you know, that Arsenal team now, I think that their players are just to avoid. On the flip side to that, again, we've seen City, you know, continuing that rich vein of form, but trying to guess Pep's starting 11 is going to proven to be a nightmare. And Manchester United, you know, those top two teams, we said, you know, their points per game ratio, you know, they not only just, you know, they go beyond what they produced in those sort of first 29 game weeks. So yeah, it was positive, and that's content that we'll be sort of rolling back out and just picking out little bits and pieces as we approach, you know, those final games of the season.
And I think you've touched there, Ben, on a few teams that are very popular in terms of the wildcards. This game week, a lot of people seem to be wanting to capitalise upon it because there are a few fixture swings. Arsenal, Wolves, Leicester and Liverpool, I think, are very keen picks. But I think, in my estimation here, there's a little bit too much focus on the fact that there is uncertainty. As you said there with Arsenal, the Europa League is going to play a big part in the thinking, and the underlying data isn't that good. Leicester, I think, are probably a stronger pick, but they don't have great defensive data, and attacking-wise, the goals aren't coming from the person that you'd expect. Liverpool, probably one of the stronger candidates out of those big four that are having that fixture swing. And then Wolves, they've just had that huge news of the loss of Johnny, and the fact that their own data is not great. So we're going to analyse all that stuff with defensive. But one question to you, going forward, because of the goals, because of the porous defences that we're seeing in the Premier League at the moment, do you think that going forward, 3 at the back with goal-scoring defenders is almost the key to success and capitalising on the goal-scoring trends, playing 5 in the midfield and 3 up front?
Still, I think focusing on defenders who can potentially return offensively are definitely a way forward, because as we've seen, there will be an upturn in the the number of goals scored. Therefore, trying to nail down clean sheets is going to be difficult. So if you can maybe offset some of that with some attacking returns, then all well and good. I did pull a last minute wild card. I think, honestly, hand on heart, hadn't given it really much thought at all. And I bet maybe within the last 30 minutes of the actual deadline, just thought, you know what, I'm going to go for it. And goal scoring defenders are help form the cornerstone of my backline. I looked at Dina, and we touched upon Trent being two of those that are brought in. Very disappointed with the Everton game, but I still think there's opportunities in the running for Dina to hopefully bring home a few points. But TAA returning, I think it was a 12-point haul there in his first game in, so I couldn't really ask for any more than that.
Yeah, he did fantastic. And I think looking at the Liverpool game during this midweek stretch against Real Madrid, they were absolutely dreadful. Let's be frank about that. But TAA still entices me. He himself has great kind of attacking underlying data. He's creating chances at a rate that we're kind of used to, like we were in previous seasons. But also, Liverpool's underlying Premier League defensive data has been quite good. Over the last 6 game weeks, they have 3 clean sheets, only 4 goals conceded, and an XG conceded of 6.08. So they're kind of back to their old selves, where they're overperforming defensively. There is a little bit more stability at the back. The fact that Fabinho has now been released almost back into that DM role rather than playing as a centre-back at times, which doesn't really use the full width of his skills. And so, yeah, I think Liverpool TAA is a good one, enticing me. And the fact that his price point means that he's comparable almost as well to a lot of 7 mil midfielders. I think there is a big upturn there. So even after a poor performance midweek, I think that Liverpool is still all right tone. And then looking at the run towards the end of the season as well, I mean, Liverpool have got loads of great fixtures. As kind of previously discussed, they're actually the team with the best run towards the end of the season. A sea of green. The only difficult red fixture in there is Man United, but they're playing what we identified as the group of teams that you want to play, the teams that have nothing to play for / are in that relegation battle. They play Villa, who arguably are a team with nothing to play for. I mean, what do they go from there? Leeds, poorest defence, but then Newcastle, Southampton, West Brom, Burnley, Crystal Palace, these are all teams that concede a lot, not a lot to play for / in that relegation group. It's a great run of fixtures. There's going to be goals, and I'm looking forward to hopefully manoeuvring Salah or Jota or somebody like that in, but that is for the attacking discussions. At the moment, I think TAA is a great pick to bring in. I'm also still happy with Chelsea, Ben. Freak game week, wouldn't you say?
Jesus, when was the last time a Sam Allardyce team scored 5 goals
Exactly.
away from home? Unbelievable. As part of that wild card, and by the way, Diania was one of the players that was shipped out. So, of course, he returns with an assist and with a goal. But fair play. Look, even before the sending off, from the outside looking in, you will see maybe Chelsea 10 men, backs against the walls. But West Brom executed their game plan superbly and fully deserved that. And I think maybe with 11 players on the pitch, West Brom could have still left the bridge with all 3 points. It just goes to show as well, when we talk about stats in the data and underlying, ultimately it's about putting the ball in the back of the net, because Thomas Tuchel, ahead of the Champions League game in Porto on Wednesday, we're recording just before that, he says, across every metric, even with 10 men, we outperformed West Bromwich Albion. So, and he was because he was talking about maybe the attitude of the players and did they actually go into that game with the expectation that they were going to, walk away with 3 points. I think that was 14 games unbeaten at the time under Tuchel, and particularly, that that run of games had been built on that sort of strong defensive unit, that foundation. And yeah, they were dismantled with that. And the sending off played a part. I was very disappointed. I actually brought in Andreas Christiansen. I thought he was Aspilicueta is the one that you'll probably say is nailed in that back line. The rest, they're fairly interchangeable, with goalkeeper aside. And he had been talking up Christiansen. He had played 90 minutes in the last 4 Premier League games. And of course, he was dropped. And then he was substituted in after the Thiago Silva sending off and returned to -1 scoring. So I'm waiting to see how Chelsea line up in the Champions League. That may have some kind of bearing on how they might line up in the Premier. Of course, Rudiger didn't play last weekend. We'd expect a return for him. It wouldn't be surprised me if Silva does start in the Champions League and maybe Christensen is kept fresh and then he starts in the league this weekend, with Silva being suspended.
Yeah, looking at the data, Tuchel is dead right. They had 2.72 XG to West Brom's 1.52. I don't know where the hell those 5 goals came from, but it's a crazy overperformance there from West Brom. The only silver lining for me was almost 2 fingers up to Tuchel that he didn't start Mason Mount. He came on, he scored, he showed that he should have been on there, and hopefully that kind of says to Tuchel, right, over the next few weeks you do have to play Mason Mount because he is in my FPL side. And next game week they are playing against Crystal Palace. I think it's a captainable game. I think that's how good it is with how poor Chelsea are. With how poor Crystal Palace are. Chelsea's goals from Werner aren't there that often, but Mason Mount seems to do the bits. He's either kind of scoring or assisting in those situations. So, yeah, I think Chelsea defensively are fine, but my worry is who to bring in. I felt bad for a lot of the community because a lot of people tripled up on their assets for that game week. I think one of the big problems is knowing who's going to start. Tuchel and Pep just seem to, I don't know if they went to a similar finishing school of rotation. It's kind of hard to know who's going to play in there. As you said, Aspie seems to be the one that would be starting, but even then, he's not nailed. The only one really is Mendy. So that's why I've stuck with just one Chelsea asset at the back. Let's move it on.
Just to touch on a point as well, what's I haven't really heard mentioned a lot is, following that performance, was the absence of N'Golo Kante. What impact we know how he's such a great ball winner, breaking up play, acting as a shield in front of that, either a back 3 or a back 4. So, he's back for the Champions League as well. So presumably if he comes through that tie unscathed, then he will be back into that Premier League starting 11. And again, it just makes Chelsea all the more appealing. They're a lot more stable. They look a lot more solid. And yeah, I'm with you. There's no need to have a knee-jerk reaction with this and jump off those Chelsea assets just because of that one freak result.
I think, though, one team that I'm evaluating at the moment is West Ham, and it's kind of a similar loss that you're talking about there. N'Golo Kante, well, West Ham's N'Golo Kante is Declan Rice, and you can kind of explain how long he will be out for, but I was looking at the fact that Masuaku was playing very high up the pitch. He was back in that kind of left wing-back role. That enticed me. But then Antonio's got injured as well. There's a few little problems there with West Ham. Kind of just bring it back to the data that we looked at. West Ham might go into the mindset that we talked about in what we found, maybe a more conservative style. So they might go, right, we've lost our main attacking output. We've lost Declan Rice. We're going to do what teams vying for Champions League spots do, play conservatively, not let many goals in, but not score as many. So that obviously affects Lingard a little bit more. That might actually be good news for Masuaku, Cresswell, Kufal, whoever you own. But with the loss of Declan Rice, how long is he going to be out for, Ben?
At the moment, the club are cautiously optimistic of a 4 to 6 week return to play timeline. However, it's my own feeling that, we're talking about a knee ligament strain. He did manage to see through the 90 minutes with England. It was an injury that he picked up in the World Cup qualifier against Poland. But, it's pushing it. What I would say is, in terms of a potential return, this is where other influencing factors will come into play. So if the season is effectively over for West Ham, let's say they lose 3 or 4 of the next maybe 5 games, and we're going into a dead rubber, then it could be that David Moyes doesn't want to take any risks. There's no need to rush Declan Rice back. I suppose from his own perspective, he'll want to be ensuring that he's getting his rehab done right and still pushing for a place in the Euros. But what I would suggest is it's going to be a very, very tight timeline, regardless of what's coming out officially at the club. The difficulty is he hasn't really had any major injuries so far in his career, so we don't know how he heals, how he responds, and how he's going to sort of progress through those various phases in terms of a return to play. Look, fingers crossed for him and for West Ham, he does come back before the end of the season. But at this moment, I very much see it just hanging in the balance.
The positive thing, though, for West Ham is that they have one of the best runs towards the end of the season, and this means that they're playing teams that don't score very much. The 3 kind of difficult fixtures in there against Leicester, Chelsea and Everton, but we kind of know that Everton ebb and flow between being a good, formidable attack and then all of a sudden they're just absolutely dreadful. So that one maybe shouldn't be chalked as a red one either. Leicester, Chelsea, I can see that. But throwing in there, they play Newcastle, Burnley, Brighton, West Brom and Southampton going towards that game week 38. So there is that opportunity there for maybe picking up defensive points there, and probably Jesse Lingard's the one that's going to profiteer most from playing against poor defences as well. So I wouldn't say the writing's on the wall at the moment. This isn't a team that are going into a difficult run without Declan Rice. They're going into a nicer run than a lot of teams, and they do have a lot to play for as well. There's going to be a lot of inspiration. David Moyes, as you've quoted many times, is very tough on those players, and he really wants that Champions League place. They are a team that have a lot to play for, and kind of looking at our data, it points that probably we will see an improvement in defensive output, so I'm kind of happy there. Looking at the players then, would you say that a Masuaku, a Kufal, is that somebody that's on your horizon plus Cresswell if Antonio is out for a prolonged period of time?
You touched upon it, and it's something obviously I noticed that Masuaku playing in an advanced role on the left-hand side as a 3 in behind Antonio, but then when Bowen come on, look, he's been out for 4 months, so there's going to be a period of time when he needs to build that base level of fitness, that sharpness, so he isn't going to be firing on all 4 cylinders. He's come out and he's already said he was absolutely knackered after that game. Just the intensity of it. There's no getting away from that. The Premier League is the most intense and energetic league in the world, and no matter what you do in training, practice matches, you can't substitute that. But that's encouraging, and a good thing is Masuaku has already returned an assist in his first game back. So again, I'm looking at that, and in terms of playing without Rice and playing without Antonio, obviously, Mark Noble came in, and then Jared Bowen, I think within 2 minutes of his introduction, grabs a goal. So there's an opportunity there for him to stake a regular place again in that team. So I think there's a lot of, you've got Lingard wanting to go to the Euros. There's a lot of things to like about West Ham during this run in, and I think Masuaku is definitely up there with, if you want a differential to move away from your Kufals or your Cresswells, then he'll definitely be your man.
And just looking at the data as well, West Ham have been fantastic this season, but the teams that they are playing over the next few game weeks, if you average their goals per game, it's 1.22 goals per game scored by those teams. So it's not a high scoring kind of group of teams that they're playing as well. Obviously the big ones in there are Leicester and Chelsea, kind of bringing that average up, but that kind of fills me with confidence as well. There is the form, there is the fixtures. Obviously Declan Rice is a big loss, but there's other kind of factors there. I think as a unit they are really solid, and David Moyes needs to be given a lot of praise for it. Let's move it to another team though that a lot of people are looking at, and as we mentioned at the start there, they do have the fixture swing, but I think there's a lot to dislike about Wolves. The loss of Johnny, I think when he's been in the side, they've actually looked a lot better. He's been very good at kind of marking out that side, stopping the wingers of teams that have been kind of on his side of the field, and done a lot better job than the other people that have been there this season. There's also been the fact that this season there's been so many people in Johnny's position that there's been no certainty at the back. Some people have looked at maybe getting in Patricio, Cody, Bolly. So obviously Cody and Bolly have that ability to attack dead ball situations. But for me, the defensive data of Wolves has been dreadful. Over the last 6 game weeks, the side have conceded the most shots in the box of any side in the Premier League, and they are bottom 4 for XG conceded with only 2 clean sheets. So for me, there's no form to kind of bring them in. Yes, there are the fixtures, but again, bring it back to comments that we've made. I think realistically, Wolves are a team with not much to play for. They're not going to get the European spots. They're safe enough. They'll see out the end of the season and they'll stay up. So what do they have to play for? I think maybe the big upswing that you might see is in their goal scoring, because in their head they'll probably think, right, we've lost Johnny, the defensive kind of solidity is gone a little bit at the back. They might have to be forced almost to play with the handbrake off to then go out and outscore the teams that they're playing against. Nuno Espirito Santo is a manager that a lot of his style is predicated on really strong defence, but that's not been there this season. They might think that they have to try something else, and so I think it's going to be a detriment to their defence. I mean, what are your thoughts and feelings, Ben? Are Wolves just a bigger void?
Yeah, I've got absolutely no love for Wolves, none whatsoever. I look at that back line, maybe Bowley would be one, but, he missed out on Monday night due to COVID, positive test from international duty. Wolves, of course, play on Friday this week. So given that, short turnaround, we would expect him to miss out again. Ait Nouri, he came off. I'm looking at that starting 11 and I'm thinking, is there a place there for Kilman with Cias maybe going out to the left? There's too many uncertainties. I just don't like them, full stop. They've been poor. I think there's got to be questions asked. Great manager, don't get me wrong, but made some decisions. Fair enough, you want to get rid of your Matt Doherty's and stuff, but haven't been impressed with Samiro. I think he's looked bang average. You look at the money that they spent on Fabio Silva. He got a goal last weekend, but I think it's 35 million in the region of you're not afforded the time in the Premier League to at clubs like Wolves and Newcastle, and you kind of just buy players and then in 2 or 3 years where they maybe acclimatise and settle, then you start repaying some of that. They've got to come in and score. Maybe it's been amplified because of the loss of Raul Jimenez. We don't know, but there's too many issues. It was, and going down. Did they go 3-0 down against West Ham on Monday night, and at home, and that's poor. I mean, that's that if it wasn't a Nuno, and you were looking at this Wolves team given what they've produced since they came up from the Championship, you could call into question whether this man actually is he under a little bit of pressure in terms of his position. Maybe they've over delivered, but he's went out and he spent a lot of money for Wolves. And at this moment in time, they just haven't. Look at the William Jose purchase. That wasn't a cheap introduction in January by any stretch of the imagination. So no, they're on my shit list.
There's the hit list and the shit list that I think they're very useful, and continuing the list that comes from the rear end, we're focusing finally on Leicester and Arsenal. Now, I think Leicester, the ability to kind of maybe get a differential, maybe find the points, is in their attack, because just to reiterate, because we did talk about this and a few of these points last weekend, but they've not been keeping clean sheets, and they didn't against Man City. Maybe that one is a little bit more expected because of Man City, but there's been massive underperformance in defence of the Foxes so far this season, and especially in the last 6 game weeks, a massive overperformance in attack. So I'm not very kind of keen on them. And Arsenal, just so many reasons against them. They've not been playing well. They seem to go through purple patches, but they're just that. They're purple patches that kind of distract from the fact that the team haven't been very good this season. And even when they're playing good defensively, they're still letting in goals. They haven't kept many clean sheets this season, which is the bread and butter for these assets. As you said there, Louise, Tierney are out. There's just not a lot going for the Gunners at the moment. And as an Arsenal fan, that makes me sad, but it's just a reality of the situation. So I think you kind of agree there, though, Ben. And those are the kind of final 2 that I want to touch before we go into the end of the show.
Yeah, I wouldn't touch personally. No chance, Arsenal. No love. I've got less love for Arsenal than I have for Wolves. And Leicester, while I see a little bit of appeal in there, I see returns coming from the top end of the pitch. And even then, in the absence of Maddison, I'd question that at this moment in time. I don't think Kelechi can keep on performing at the same levels. And yes, I agree with it to an extent around Manchester City, but I was hugely disappointed in the way Leicester played. You've been in such a good form. Just go out there and do what you've been doing and take the game to Manchester City a little bit. But you know what? It almost, they were beaten from the first minute. They didn't lay a glove, and Manchester City looked in absolute total control and could have shifted through that gears. Other than maybe the Vardy disallowed goal for the, I think it was offside. Then other than that, I don't really recall Leicester producing anything.
Yeah, this is the thing that I've seen so many times with Tottenham this season, is they kind of went into that game not wanting to lose, rather than going, we're going to play our way. We've done well. I mean, they did well earlier in the season playing their way. So I will say that I was disappointed as well, Ben. But hopefully there won't be too many disappointments with the ideas that we've given you for your teams, and that you found some useful information here. As always, I ask you to remember to like, share and subscribe to the channel. We've got so much good content coming out all through the week for you, and it's not just FPL content that we're looking at. Is tailored for you, because we've got Q&A sessions, and there's of course the magnificent Dr. Raj with his output as well, giving you the inside information behind injuries as well, why they are as bad as they are, or if there's truth to certain rumours or myths that are going around the Premier League. But from me, I wish you the best of luck, and hopefully you wish me a bit of luck, because I definitely need that in FPL at the moment, and also because Big Ben is staring down the back of me, and I'm very scared that he'll catch up soon. But from me, it's a goodbye, and I throw it over to Ben just for the final goodbyes.
Yeah, cheers. I think there's 28 points in it between, and Jason, by the way, stole a march on me at the start of the season, but now I'm sitting 28 points behind with 2 chips in hand. So this one could go down to the wire. But for now, defensive assets done. Attacking assets will be dropping well ahead of game week 31. So hope you enjoyed that. Please comment, like, give us your feedback. It helps shape our content, And of course, you know, that's what we're all about, is about giving. So, you know, help guide us, take us along the way. But for now, we're done.